Well, good morning, everybody. To get us started today, I wanted to talk a bit about the year-to-date precipitation stats, because what we've continued to see here across the United States is that the areas that have been wet just keep getting wetter, and the places that have been drier just seem to be staying persistently dry. So I'm really focusing in here on the extent of this drought that's in this part of the plains. And the reason why is because as we go into the month of May, this is typically one of the wettest months for parts of the central and southern plains, given that we typically have a lot of severe weather here, and those storms can produce a tremendous amount of precipitation. When I just think about the extent of the drought that is in parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado, and this even extends into parts of Nebraska, even though you don't quite fully see that the real dry signal here, it just makes me wonder, are we going to be able to break this before we pull into a summer pattern? Now, on the flip side of that, there's been several places that can't seem to shut off the precipitation, and we're going to watch these next couple of systems deliver even more precipitation into places that have been quite wet. We're also going to see heavy snows coming out of Montana into the southern Canadian prairie and northern plains, getting all the way to parts of Minnesota and then into Ontario. So again, it's just an idea of looking at what the pattern has given us so far, and if we're going to fully break away from it in order to return some precipitation. So I just wanted to show you something here. I'm just going to go to our website, agweather.com, and if we go to Dodge City, Kansas, so I just typed it in, you click on it, you get the index number in there, click submit. I was just amazed to see that in this part of Kansas, take a look at this. Well, currently this year, they're at 30% of normal precipitation since the start of the year. And if you slide down here and take a look at the year-to-date precipitation, you'll notice that I've got in this dash line here last year, the last time Dodge City saw decent precipitation, I guess you can call it, that was in September, and then they flatlined since September. And you come out here, they're of course well less than normal precipitation on the year. So we just start thinking, like, when is this moisture going to come back? And so I was trying to do a little comparison to take kind of a bigger idea approach to this, because to put this into context, parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma here are having like a top 3 driest, last July to this April. Okay, that's a top 3 driest kind of stretches of time in history that we have for this area. And so this is outdoing like what we saw in 11 and 12. This is outdoing the drought of the 50s. This is outdoing the drought of the 30s in some regards. And around it, it's just been so incredibly wet. We know that the newest long-range outlook from the Climate Prediction Center just continues to show that this area will likely stay in drought this spring. And what we're going to be watching for are any signs of deeper four corners troughs, because those are the ones that can take the dry line and pull it back to the west, delivering the storms that are needed to help break this drought. So that's what we need to be watching for, knowing the depth of this drought. Okay, problem is this. The newest weeklies, which we showed on Monday night, going out there through the month of May, keep the area warmer than average, and then you just kind of notice this whole region and through here still forecast to have a little bit of a drier bias. It may be too dry here in the forecast for parts of Iowa, Minnesota, and maybe even eastern sides of Nebraska and Kansas, but we just wonder, is it going to bring moisture back into this particular region? So let's go look at the setup right now. Looking at our morning satellite animation, just as the sun was rising here, the storm system we're watching very carefully is this one. Last night producing some snow in Montana. We'll continue to do that today. We're going to talk about the severe weather risk out of this thing as it moves forward, but take a look at yesterday. Just take you back. As we just walk through the day, a couple of things to take note of here, and I put this in the report. Watch the snow attempt to melt here in central Wisconsin and eastern Wisconsin, so right in through there. And then later in the day, keep an eye on this part of Nebraska and also this part of Colorado and Kansas. What you're going to watch is a large supercell erupt here that produced a lot of hail, some of it baseball size. And this is dust and smoke on this side of Kansas and Colorado. Our all hazards weather map has that area under high wind watch today, high wind warning today. High wind watch, And then down here we've got the red flag warnings, while all across the northern tier here along the 49th, we've got winter storm watches, warnings, and advisories. This morning the temps got pretty cold over here in parts of the eastern Corn Belt. They had a frost event, but I think over the next 3 days, attention's going to turn to the large warm sector that's opening here, where we've got today's risk of severe storms. We then see tomorrow's risk of severe storms sliding down here from Texas into Missouri, maybe into Illinois, and then when we get into the day on the 21st, primarily southeastern Texas into Louisiana. Okay, bigger picture things on snow. This is what the European model is predicting for the next 5 days, most of this coming in the next 3. So we're looking here at snowfall totals at a 10-to-1 ratio across the northern plains of the United States and southern Canadian prairie. So some of these amounts are over a foot easily. You then slide a little bit east of there just to show you what's coming into like parts of Minnesota, around Lake Superior, and then into Ontario. Some of these snowfall amounts, again, well over a foot of snow expected. So let's go have a look at it here with the high-res NAM. We're going to pick up midday today, and you're going to watch this storm system just spin out of Montana into southern Saskatchewan, northern parts of North Dakota. And as it does so, we're going to watch tonight and tomorrow morning, see all this? For the risk of some strong storms to come out of the southern side of this system. Now, we're not going to spend too much time today talking about storm mode and all of that. I just want you to be aware that throughout this area, we need to keep a close eye on the radar throughout the day today for the risk of these strong to severe storms. So where I've got this parked is 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So we're going to watch this main frontal boundary early in the morning start to press into Iowa, of course, and Illinois, Missouri. And then tomorrow afternoon and evening, this is Thursday, possibly just a large frontal squall line that will be pushing through this area, which is why we're going to watch the southern tail of this for the severe weather. Notice in the north that the snow spreads across, the 49th and then getting north here into Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and parts of Ontario. And then going through Thursday night into Friday, this will play out to about midday on Friday. This is where the much colder air comes in behind this. So more snow that's coming here to parts of the Rockies, getting down into Colorado, and then still more snow being added to North Dakota and Minnesota. That's just in the next 60 hours here. If we let the European model pick up where that one leaves off, we're right about here. We just play this front forward, and what's going to happen is there's a secondary low that builds on the tail end of this front down here in the lower Mississippi River Valley on Friday night, and it pushes over the eastern Corn Belt, delivering some rain out ahead of the colder air on the backside of this. And that whole system wraps up into Ontario and then tries to go into Quebec, but notice it doesn't. See how it goes straight over the Hudson Bay? There is a ridge feature we're going to be talking about showing up in this area that we need to keep an eye on. That's going to push these systems in this direction. But watch what we see coming out of the southern plains early next week. So this is Sunday getting into Monday. So weaker low pulls into parts of the Pacific Northwest. But I'm keeping my eye down here starting next Monday night through Wednesday. So here we go. This is now Monday afternoon and evening, getting into Tuesday morning. And while this low begins to emerge, there's going to be plenty of moisture coming out of the Gulf to help pull back into the backside of this. And this trough position may be close enough to the Four Corners states to actually bring some rain to parts of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. All right? This is next Tuesday. So that system's a much farther to the south trajectory, but watch it just close off all of the planting windows here, which have already been shut down due to colder weather this weekend as that rain moves across. So here we are now looking at the end of April and wondering if May is going to open the windows back up for some planting. And we just distill this all down into one map and we say, well, where's it going to be wet over the next 10 days versus dry? And this is what the latest models are looking like. Wetter than average here, drier than here. Okay, next, let's talk about that week 2 pattern, because what we see continues to show that this is the corridor that looks wet into week 2. Remember, we talked about that yesterday. If we can get some mild air back into these areas, especially in the west, we can start to open things up to get more planting activity done here to finish April and start May, really to start May. But we know that over the next 7 days, everywhere in gray here is where we're expecting to have a frost. And let's go have a quick look here what the daily high temperatures are going to do, compare them to average. Here's Wednesday's highs into Thursday. That's that warm sector that opens up that we need to have the severe storms. But then as I mentioned, Thursday into Friday, the heat presses east. The colder air follows. A ridge opens in the west, returning some mild air, while the central United States is really just dipped back into some cold conditions. We expect to see highs like this in early March. All right. So this is now going through Sunday into Monday and Tuesday. And as expected this time of year, the temperature pattern goes on a bit of a roller coaster ride. I mean, it's spring. But if we look at how many GDDs we're expecting to pick up over the next 7 days, this map tells the story. This is the corn formula, 50 as a base, 86 as a max. So pause it and have a close look at that. Finally, let's talk about the temperatures, though, because we know that cold air is going to press east, and here it goes. So you start to see it moving out of the plains across the east. So if we just stop here, day 5 through 10, we notice that to finish off the month of April, we favor much more colder air in this region. The west starts its warm up, and we're going to start to see these temperatures beginning to fade as the pattern, I think, takes a shift going into the month of May. And we're going to watch that very carefully, and we'll talk about it in Thursday night's in-depth report. But I think it's going to be an important thing to see when those windows are going to open in early May to get this crop established, especially in the central United States. That's just an area that I've been focusing on lately. What I love about this is the heat that's forecast to return to parts of the West. We need this heat to get back into this area, especially in the Pacific Northwest, given how cold it's been this spring. Lastly, I want to give you a 10-day international outlook on precip, and I want you to note that parts of the Iberian Peninsula have been missed a lot lately. We've seen better rains in through this year, including over here spring rains around the Russian wheat belt and then getting into Ukraine, but the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, has missed a lot. The heavy rains are finally starting to come to an end in southern parts of Brazil, but the dryness is now expected to extend from Mato Grosso do Sul all the way down through the Parna River Valley. Still wetter to the north. One of the things we're concerned about here, though, is that possibly we could get, let's just see how far out this is, that in the next couple of mornings, we could see low temperatures in parts like Parna, Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul, and Buenos Aires that actually try to dip down there into the single digits Celsius. So we'll watch out for a patchy frost. Earlier in the week, I didn't think we'd get there, but we may get there. So we'll have to watch out for that carefully. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks.